You're 2 hours into a hard ride or deep into a 50-mile time trial, or on the fourth lap of a crit when the pace has been relentless and something changes. Your pedal stroke feels different. It's choppier, it's less smooth. Your position on the bike starts to drift. Your head drops, your shoulders creep up. You're working harder for the same power, or the same power feels harder. You know this feeling, everyone does. But here's the question, why does it happen? The easy answer is fatigue. Muscles are tired, you're slowing down, but that's not the whole story. What's actually happening is your coordination is destabilising. The solution your body found for producing power efficiently is falling apart. And that's what I want to talk about today, how your body finds solutions, why those solutions are stable until they're not, and what you can do about it. There's a concept in movement science called an attractor. It sounds technical, it's not really. An attractor is just a stable pattern your body settles into, a solution that works. Think about your pedal stroke. You don't consciously coordinate every muscle. You don't think about when your quads fire versus your hamstring versus your calves. You just pedal, and somehow it works. A pattern emerges from you, the bike, the task, all of it interacting. Your body isn't running a stored program. It's figuring it out in real time, self-organizing based on whatever constraints it's dealing with. That's an attractor, a stable state your system gravitates towards. You've got loads of these in cycling, how your joints coordinate through the pedal stroke, how you hold your upper body on the hoods versus the drops, versus the aero bars, whether you climb seated or standing at a certain given gradient. These aren't random, they're solutions found through practice, repetition, trial and error. And here's the thing, attractors are stable. That's the point. Once you're in one, you tend to stay in it, attracted to it. Your body resists being knocked out. But skilled riders aren't locked into one solution. They're multi-stable, multiple patterns available. The goal isn't one perfect technique. It's about having options, being able to switch when constraints change until you can't. Let me make this absolutely concrete. There's 3 places where attractors matter in cycling. First, pedaling coordination, the timing of how your muscles fire, like I mentioned, how your joints move relative to each other. Research shows these patterns are remarkably consistent within a person. You do the same coordination pattern at the same cadence day after day, it's stable, it's your attractor. But it isn't fixed. What happens if you change the cadence constraint and the pattern changes? Go from 60 to 120 RPM and the temporal structure of your coordination shifts. It's the same muscles, but it's a different organization. This is what non-linear behavior means. Near certain thresholds, small changes in cadence can produce disproportionate changes in coordination. It isn't a perfectly straight line, it's reorganization. Second, posture, especially in time trial position, your upper body, your head position, how stable you hold yourself while producing power. There's research showing that head and torso stability decrease across maximal effort. You start controlled, by the end, things are moved around more. Fatigue is destabilizing your postural attractor. And that matters for aerodynamics. A stable aero position is more efficient than one that's drifting and bobbing. The attractor isn't just about comfort, it's about drag. And third, technique states, seated versus standing climbing. These aren't just preferences, they're different coordination solutions, different muscle recruitment, different metabolic demands. Your body switches between them based on the gradient, intensity or fatigue. And that switch is what movement scientists call it a phase transition. You're not gradually changing, you're flipping from one stable state to the other. And there's a term for the timing relationship between body parts, relative phase. In cycling, that's hip, knee, ankle timing across the stroke, how the upper body stabilizes relative to the leg when fatigue's rising. That timing relationship shifts, the relative phase becomes more variable. If that variability exceeds a threshold, the coordination pattern destabilizes. So why does this fall apart when you're tired? Factors are stable, but not infinitely stable. They exist within constraints. There's a useful distinction here. Control parameters are things that push you towards a transition. Gradient, cadence, speed, fatigue, and bunch density. When one of these crosses a threshold, the stable pattern loses stability. Order parameters are what you can actually observe. Posture stability, smoothness, side-to-side sway, when controlling parameters rise enough. The order parameter changes abruptly, that's the phase. Think of it like a bowl. When you're fresh, you're deep in the bowl, stable, hard to get knocked out of. As fatigue builds, the bowl gets shallower, takes less to push you out. Research in time trial cycling shows this across a maximal effort. Movement variability increases, head stability decreases, torso stability decreases. The attractor weakens. It happens to everyone. Elites and novices both show increased instability across a hard effort. But here's the nuance. Not all variability is bad. The best riders don't eliminate movement variation. They manage it. Some variability is actually protective. It allows adaptation without collapse. The difference is how they handle destabilisation. They operate closer to the edge without falling over it, transition smoothly between the states when one solution starts to fail. And all this links to durability. We talk about durability as maintaining physiological function under load, but coordination is part of that picture. Your metabolic capacity might hold, your coordination stability might not. And if your technique falls apart, you're working harder for the same power anyway. Durability isn't just about your engine, it's about holding the solution together whilst the engine is under strain. So let me go deeper on that whole seated versus standing thing, because there's interesting research here. When you're climbing, you've got two main options, seated or standing. Different positions, different muscle recruitments, and different coordination patterns. Most riders will switch based on feel, the gradient, get steep or legs are burning, stand up for a bit, feels better, sit back down. But what's actually happening? So researchers looked at this directly. Elite cyclists on a steep treadmill climb. 3 conditions, seated only, standing only, and repeated transitions. Then switching condition. The switching condition produced lower lactate than either continuous seating or continuous standing. Same power, same oxygen consumption, but different metabolic distribution. Why? Because you're distributing the load across different coordination solutions. Different muscles get emphasized in each position. Switching between them means no single pattern gets hammered continuously. From an attractor perspective, you're deliberately oscillating between 2 stable states instead of grinding one state into the ground. Now, that doesn't mean constant switching between standing and seating is always faster. It means alternating patterns distribute the load differently. Context matters, obviously. The optimal strategy probably depends on the gradient, the duration of the climb, and your individual physiology. But it shows that phase transitions aren't just tactical, they're metabolic, and it's something you can train deliberately. Knowing when to switch and being smooth at it, it really is a skill to learn. Okay, 3 types of constraints matter here: individual, task, and environment. They're not separate and they interact. Individual constraints are you, your physiology, your fatigue, your experience. Task constraints are the activity, equipment, goals, power targets, cadence, gradient, all of that. Environmental constraints are external, so that's your road surface, your wind, your weather, but also the social environment, so that's other riders and the race dynamics. Movement emerges from all 3 interacting continuously, and constraint history shapes which solution becomes stable. There's a key concept here: affordances. An affordance is an opportunity for action. A gap at the barrier is not an affordance for every rider. It becomes one only when speed, control, line choice, and confidence are present. Same gap, different affordance, depending on who's looking at it. This is why skills aren't just about what you can do, they're about what you can see. Indoor training constrains perception action coupling. On the turbo, you're locked in, the bike doesn't move, you don't steer, you don't respond to other riders, you're not making those micro decisions. Indoor training strengthens specific solutions efficiently, but it reduces variability exposure. And that's not a criticism, it's just a constraint reality. That's why representative learning design matters. Training should simulate the constraints you actually face, not just the physical demands, the perceptual demands, the decision-making demands. So that's why get outside when you can. Outdoor riding develops that perception action coupling that transfers more broadly. So what do we do with all of this? The coaching application here is called the constraints-led approach. It's a simple idea. You don't teach technique by prescribing exactly how someone should move. You manipulate constraints and let the coordination emerge. This often promotes more implicit learning. The athlete searches for solutions faster than following instructions, but it can still include instruction, obviously. The primary lever is constraint manipulation, not verbal cues. Think about learning to ride a bike. Balance bikes work better than training wheels. Training wheels remove the balance constraint. A child never has to solve that problem. Balance bikes keep the constraint. Child then self-organizes around it. The same principle for trained cyclists. Want to change someone's pedaling pattern? Change the cadence. Change the resistance. Don't tell them how to pedal. Let them discover. And if you want more upper body stability, practice holding position under fatigue. Constraint forces adaptation. And if you want to expand someone's repertoire, Expose them to varied constraints, different gradients, different positions, different group situations. Here's a concrete example. The attractor isn't something you install with instructions, it's something that emerges from the interaction between the rider, the bike, and the environment. And my job as a coach, or even yours as a self-coach rider, is to set up the constraints that make the desired solution attractive and then test it under fatigue, because that's when attractors fail. That's when you find out if the solution is robust enough. Okay, I know this has been a pretty heavy one, fairly academic, but here's a few points that will help this land, okay? 1. Train coordination under fatigue. If you only practice technique fresh, you're building attractors that will probably destabilize when it matters. Do technical work tired, position work, group riding when you're already cooked. 2. Use phase transitions deliberately. Seated to standing isn't just for when you're suffering, it's load management. So practice switching and find out what works. 3. Get outside, not because indoor is bad, it's useful, it's a tool, but it constrains your options. Outdoor riding demands more solutions, more micro decisions, more of what actually makes you a complete cyclist. 4. Think about stability, not just power. If your position falls apart in the last few miles of a time trial, you're going to lose time. If your bike handling degrades late in a race, you're going to make errors. Decision making will slow, you're missing moves, and that's all trainable. And 5. Vary your constraints, different cadences, different positions, different terrain, different group situations. Broader exposure means more solutions available. 6. Aim for the edge. Skill performance happens near instability. The goal isn't to be so locked in that nothing shifts you. It's operating close to the edge without falling over. It's flexible but structured. Your body is constantly finding solutions, coordination patterns, postures, techniques, stable states it settles into. These solutions work until they don't, until fatigue changes the constraints and everything starts to destabilize. Durability is partly about this. Can you hold the solution together under strain? Can you transition smoothly when one pattern fails? And it isn't an abstract theory, it's what's happening every time your technique falls apart on a hard ride, or every time your position drifts, or every time standing feels better than sitting, and then sitting feels better than standing. Your attractors are real, they're trainable. Constrain them deliberately, test them under fatigue, and expand the repertoire. That's how technique becomes robust. Saddleupcycling.co.uk if you want to get in touch. Saddle up and sit down, and saddle up and sit down. Cheers. Bye-bye.